Hello, and welcome back to part 2 of More Than a Gift. In the first program, we started unpacking Song of Songs chapter 4, and I told you this had something to do with the wise men and the gold, the frankincense, and the myrrh. And at the end of the last program, you were probably sitting there scratching your head thinking, I didn't hear a thing about wise men and gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Hang on, we're getting there. We're getting there. But when you talk about prophecy, again, if you don't set the foundation, you're not going to get the full implication. So I could tell you in a few words what the gold, the frankincense, and the myrrh stood for. Or, you know what? What we've been doing is we're just walking with Abraham. Like, come on, let's just follow and see where Abraham's going. And that's what we're doing. So in this program, we're going to try to get you to the wise men, the gold, the frankincense, and the myrrh. But we're still following Abraham. We're trying to figure out this land, the covenant, the people. There's a lot to this. And it's going to explain why Herod was so terrified that a new king had been born in Bethlehem. So let's just isolate from our text. Let's isolate verse 8 of chapter 4 of the Song of Songs. And this describes the route that we're going to take, that the bride is going to take back to their inheritance land. It says, come with me from Lebanon, my bride. May you come with me from Lebanon. Journey down from the summit of Amanah, from the summit of Sinir and Hermon, from the dens of lions, and from the mountains of leopards. Now, we did explain a lot of that in part 1. We're going to take a closer look now at the journey. It says, journey down from the summit of Amanah. You say, well, do we really want to go down? Yes, because remember, Amanah, it has the same shoresh, the same root as Aman, which is faith, emunah, faith, faithfulness. So what we're being told is we have an ancestor named Abraham, whether it's by blood or by spiritual descendancy. As Paul told us, if you are Messiahs, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to that promise made to him. When we're told to journey with the bridegroom, then we're retracing the steps of Father Abraham. And he started from a summit, a mountain of faith. Remember, he believed the Hemin that you learned in the last program. And it was reckoned to him as righteousness. You also have to start from this summit of faith on your journey back to the land. Because remember, there are other nations out there where there's descendants of Abraham's and even kings descended from Abraham. But do you want the nation's inheritance? Or do you want the inheritance that was promised about a specific land, with a specific boundary, with a specific covenant agreement? And if you want that, if you want an inheritance among the tribes, like we were reading in Ezekiel in the last program, then there's a specific route you need to take. He says, journey down from the summit of Amanah. I want you to find the height of your faith, like Father Abraham. The height of your faith will eventually culminate in the resurrection from the dead. You're going to be resurrected from that. You'll be caught up together with him in the clouds. As you climb a mountain, what do? You start climbing into the clouds. I don't know if you've ever done that. If you haven't, you should make a point to do that. You start going up into the clouds. You're going to be gathered into the clouds at the resurrection. You're going to understand your identity as a people. But then, remember, there's 1,000 years of history we haven't yet lived through. That's why that was the point of saying the principalities and powers, the stars, that we're going to be like, that Abraham said your descendants will be like that. They get shaken out of the places in Revelation. That means that the children of Israel now have to arise to their place. And so you journey down from that transformation. You basically eat and drink with your king during a specific period, and then it's time to rule and reign with King Messiah. And so at that time, like we saw with Yeshua, his pattern was like he could go into and out of realms anytime he wanted to. He could appear, disappear, even before he was resurrected. He had that figured out. He could just walk through a crowd and not be seen. We will be like him. And so there will be certain things because of the plan A engineering of a human being as his spirit, soul, body. We will be able to function in the Garden of Eden. But we will also have jobs. We will have missions. We will have things to do among people in the natural earth who have not yet achieved that resurrection from the dead. And it's basically a traumatized earth. Okay, after 7 years of tribulation, the people left on earth, they will be traumatized. And they're going to need some work. They're going to need some TLC to kind of nurse them back. And so we, in that sense, yes, we have to journey down from that summit of faith and be assigned an inheritance in the land and then possibly be assigned jobs to do. And that route in the land is what we see prophesied in the Song of Songs. And it's the same route taken from the north by Abraham when he journeyed into the land from Haran. And from Haran, remember, his journeys take him south. And eventually, of course, he settles in different places, but eventually he has to go to Mount Moriah. Mount Moriah. And now remember, this is Mount Moriah later became known as the Temple Mount. And now we see the connection because when it says, come with me to the mountain of myrrh and frankincense, we see where he's taking us. He's taking us back to the Temple Mount, to Mount Moriah, just like Abraham. When he offered Isaac on Mount Moriah, he's saying, come back with me there. Because from there, he's going to administrate the millennial kingdom. How can we do that? Understanding that there's a marriage between the spiritual and the natural realms. Right now, the spiritual is withdrawn a little bit. It can't literally touch like it used to at the creation. There's a contamination there. There's the human beings have not yet been purified. They're not yet achieving that state of being without blemish, but they will. That chosen group of people will achieve a life without blemish at the resurrection. And so in that time, again, those two realms, they can go back together. And there was a time when somebody saw this, because remember, this was part of the prophecy in chapter 4. You're altogether beautiful, my darling. There's no blemish in you. Well, when we sing on Shabbat Matovu, which is how lovely are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. This is one of the songs we sing on Shabbat when we gather together. Well, that comes from the words of Balaam. Remember, he was hired to curse Israel, and instead he looks out at the tribes, he looks out at the tents, and knowing what we know about them, they weren't perfect. They had some sin. But nevertheless, he looks out there, and he calls them lovely, beautiful. And so when you sing on Shabbat, Matovu, how lovely are your tents of Jacob, you're actually singing a song of return. You're singing the song of Israel's return, a time when they will journey down, and they will be a gift. They will be a sacrifice without a blemish. So we want to look at that word for journey down from the summit of your faith. Well, remember, Abraham was also told something in Hebrew. It was lech lecha, go for yourself. He was told to go walk and inspect the land that his offspring would possess. In this section of chapter 4, Israel's also told to do something very similar. Journey down. Retrace the steps of your father Abraham. That word in Hebrew is tashuri. Tashuri, it's actually an imperative. It's a command, do this. And it comes from shur in Hebrew, and that's going to be Strong 7789. And it means like to go around for inspection, which is what Abraham did when he spied out the land. And so now his offspring are being told, go inspect, spy out, survey. It even means to lurk for good. Like we think of people lurking around. They're always trying to do something bad when they're lurking. In this case, lurking can be good. Lay wait, observe, perceive, regard, see. These are all meanings of sure. Say, okay, I want to know more. What he's telling me to journey down. What exactly am I going to do if I journey down with him? Let's go to the first mention where the word sure was used. Not so coincidentally, remember Matovu, how lovely are your tents, O Jacob? The word is going to be found in Balaam's prophecy of a sinless Israel and her Messiah. You say, now wait a minute, how is she sinless? Let's see. So your text, in order to understand what it means to journey down, like how do the exiles get home? Start with Numbers 23. Numbers 23:9, and this is Balaam talking. And this is why we looked up the definition of coastlands, that it means nations. Balaam says, as I see him from the top of the rocks, and I look at him, okay, sure, that's the word we're looking for. Remember, journey down, observe, regard, see, perceive. So Balaam says, I look at him, I perceive him from the hills. Okay? Hills, the nations out there, but there's one holy hill. He says, behold, a people who dwells apart and will not be reckoned among the nations. They're a special people. They're not going to be part of those assigned boundaries of the nations and the millennial kingdom. They're going to be brought home. They're not reckoned over there. They're reckoned here. So that's the first mention. When he says, journey down with me, we go back to the first mention. And you realize you have to kind of wake up and say, wait a minute, my identity is not reckoned among the nations. I'm part of the land, the covenant, and the people. And this is what the Song of Songs said. It says, you're altogether beautiful, my darling. There's no blemish in you. Balaam goes on in verse 21. He echoes that. He says, he has not observed iniquity in Jacob, nor has he seen wickedness in Israel. The Lord his God is with him, and the shout, the teruah of a king is among them. That parallels what the prophecy of the Song of Songs is to. How can we be beautiful and without blemish? We're not reckoned among the nations. Balaam says, there's no iniquity, there's no wickedness in Israel. How is this accomplished? Well, he explains, he gives us two things here to focus on. Like, how can we be without a blemish? It says, the Lord his God, and this is Yod He Vav He, is with him, and the shout, the teruah. You're familiar with teruah because on the Feast of Trumpets, you've got teruah, takiya, shevarim, right? You've got these shofar calls. Well, the teruah is the shout. Remember, the Lord himself will descend from heaven with the shout, with the voice of the archangel and the trumpet, right? And so the teruah of a king, the resurrection, he's timing this with the resurrection from the dead, the teruah of a king. When our king shouts, when we hear that shofar, we're going to be resurrected from the dead. And in that resurrection, anything that has somehow been left undone, we've been as faithful as we knew how to be. It didn't mean we were perfect. But see, he says, you're altogether beautiful, my darling. There's no blemish in you. Balaam says, there's no iniquity in Jacob. There's no wickedness in Israel. There's nothing. How can that be? As we've walked with Yeshua, we've made changes. We've been transformed to the Spirit, but we can get to the end of our lives and there'll still be some things that We're not perfect. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, he can finish the work that he started. Remember, he says, I'll uphold you. I'll help you. And that's what we want to be faithful. We don't want to do nothing and then expect him to do all the work on us at the resurrection. What kind of a helper would we be in the millennium? How could we teach or preach to anybody else about faithfulness? He says, no, you come from a mountain. You come from the height of your faith. You walk the best way you know how with your Messiah. You imitate your Messiah the best way you know how, just like Abraham. When he made mistakes, he learned from them. And he increased in his faith and his faithfulness. You do the same, and he will make us perfect at the resurrection. So the shout of a king. And then as we drop down into chapter 24 of Numbers, verse 17, Balaam continues. He says, I see him, he's talking about the king, but not now. I behold him. That's the same word we're looking for. Journey down, observe, perceive. He says, I perceive him. I behold him, but not near. A star shall come forth from Jacob. A scepter shall rise from Israel, and shall crush through the head of Moab and tear down all the sons of Sheth. All right, so twice he's using that particular word that the Song of Songs is prophesying with. When it says to the exiles, journey down, it's pushing you all the way back to Balaam's prophecy of resurrected Israel, perfect and without blemish. And the key here, the shout of a king is among them. Yes, that's the key. How can they be perfect? Because of the shout of the king. But then he says two things that haven't happened yet at the time he's prophesying. A star shall come from Jacob, a scepter shall arise from Israel. This is the trappings of a king. A star, a spiritual force. A scepter, a royalty, coming through a royal tribe. That will come. So, as we look at the beast kingdoms, by the time we get to Yeshua's day, the beast kingdom has morphed. I don't know what the proper word for that would be, but we've gone from the golden head, the silver upper torso of Medo-Persia, we've gone down into the bronze belly of Greece. Now we're into the iron legs of Rome. And Rome is equated with Esau in the 1st century. That helps us to understand why it says, come with me from Lebanon. Because Babylon was the first kingdom that sent Israel into exile. Now, Assyria also did. They took many of the northern tribes and transplanted them and then replanted other peoples in the land. But they're not considered a beast kingdom because they never accomplished the qualifying thing to make you into a beast kingdom is they never destroyed Jerusalem. They never were able to breach it. And we also know that there was a remnant of all the tribes within Judah anyway. And so Babylon is going to be the first beast kingdom that accomplishes this exile. And then Rome will send the second exile of the Jews. It's going to be a prophecy that Herod will be familiar with, that there would be a king born, that he would have this spiritual authority. Remember, a star shall arise, and how Abraham was told to look at the stars. Your descendants will be like this. They will be like these principalities and powers that rule over things. So we know this great ruler, this star, is going to arise in Jacob, and he will be descended from a royal line. He'll have a scepter from Judah. So by the time of King Herod, he knows of these prophecies about a king arising, a rightful king to take the throne. He also knows, because of the prophecies, such of those in Song of Songs, that in the prophecy, the exiles will return with this Messiah, with this king, and they will be healed when he brings them home. That's how they could be without blemish. You say, how does he know these things? Well, remember, Herod is an Idumean. He comes from Edom, and so yes, he's Esau, but we know by that time the Idumeans, many of them had been forcibly converted, especially during the time of the Maccabees. So he has an affiliation with Jews, surely has the education, he knows about prophecy, he's aware of it, and he would be acutely aware of any prophecies that threatened his position as the governor of Judea. So let's look at Hosea 14:4-8 to help us understand this return from the exile, this return from Lebanon, how the King Messiah would come to be seen as the one who is part of this return. And again, it'll tell us more about what would have had Herod's radar up on this. He says, I will heal their apostasy. I will love them freely. There's a healing there. Remember, he says, I will heal you. I will help you. For my anger has turned away from them. I will be like the dew to Israel. Well, dew, depending on context, it can also mean resurrection. I will be like the dew to Israel. He will blossom like the lily, and he will take root like the cedars of Lebanon. Okay, Lebanon, remember, can represent a place of exile. That the exiles of Israel, they will be out there in Lebanon. They will be out there in the nations. And all of a sudden, they'll start taking root. They'll start growing. They'll start growing, remember, in their faith. Mountains of Lebanon are where you have to come from. His shoots will sprout, and his beauty will be like the olive tree, and his fragrance like the cedars of Lebanon. So he mentions Lebanon again. Those who live in his shadow will again raise grain, and they will blossom like the vine. His renown will be like the wine of Lebanon. O Ephraim, what more have I to do with idols? He'll have put away his idols. It is I who answer and look after you. Okay, there's that word again. Remember, journey down with me? Shur, tashuri, tur, tashur. It's the same word used right here. I will look after you. I'll watch over you. I'll perceive you. I'll observe you. And when he observes Ephraim, when he observes these exiles putting away their idols, he says, I am like a luxuriant cypress. From me comes your fruit. In other words, he's saying, exiles, you've tapped into me now. You quit following your own way. You quit worshiping idols. My presence has been out here observing you, perceiving you. And now it's time to bring you home from your exile. And even though, we know there were times in Israelite history where their boundaries extended all the way to the Euphrates, extended all the way to the Brook of Egypt. We don't really see that in its fullness until Ezekiel's vision of the millennial reign. And of course, our passage is focusing on Lebanon. He's saying, come from the exile. But we know that historically that path that Abraham took did come down from Lebanon, from Haran, from Aram. And the sages are saying these mountains would be considered north and west, biblically, not necessarily literally. Right? Directions in Scripture have symbolism. It's not always a matter of north, south, east, and west in terms of the compass. It'll be more in the general area. But we know that there are specific things that are identified with directions in prophecy. When we did the Four Winds study, again, I believe we did that in Workbook 2. If you did the the Workbook 2 study with us, we looked at the 4 winds and the 4 encampments of Israel in the wilderness and how that represented how eventually they would ascend to judge in this 4-square Jerusalem and its 12 gates, like we're talking about, displacing the stars, who will no longer be needed, who will be shaken out of their places. So in terms of direction, as we looked at each of those 4 directions, we say each represented something. One of the things we learned was that Messiah is thought to be hidden in the north. Messiah, because Saphon means north in Hebrew, Messiah was thought to be hidden in the north. And we learned that when we look west, it was identified with the exiles. And the sages say when the exiles left, they went west. Remember, don't take it as literal west. It can be, but it's more of a prophetic direction. They say his divine presence went with them in the exile, and it has been watching over them ever since. He has not left them. Just like Yeshua said, I'll never leave you or forsake you. He's saying, my eyes are on you. I'm observing you. I'm perceiving you. So that peak of Amanah, come with me, is thought to refer to Abraham. He represents the beginning of our covenant faith, our emunah, and the Messianic times, referencing the return of Abraham's exiled children back to the kingdom with King Messiah. Just as Abraham's emunah was accounted to him as righteousness, so it's going to be accounted to his descendants. It says the righteous will live by his faith. And so when we look at Amanah, the summit of Amanah is kind of a play on word. Remember I said you can sometimes squish Hebrew words together into one word. You can add a conjunction, you can add a preposition, you can add a pronoun to a pronominal ending. But Amanah, you might be saying her faith. Come down from the summit of her faith, Israel's faith, the faith of the bride. So the prophecy is telling us that Abraham's children, the daughters of Israel, the daughters of Jerusalem, they will go back to the head or the peak, the summit of her faith. And who is that? Just Abraham? No, remember it says, Tashuri, journey with me. And what did Bilam see when he observed and perceived? He saw the star of Jacob. He saw King Messiah. He saw the scepter of a royal king. So now let's get to the wise men and the gifts. Matthew 2:10. It says, the wise men, when they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. After coming into the house, they saw the child with Miriam, his mother, and they fell to the ground and worshipped him. Then, opening their treasures, they presented to him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned by God in a dream not to return to Herod, the Magi left for their own country by another way. So, they were smart enough, remember they were wise. They were wise enough to follow the star. They were wise enough to bring 3 specific gifts. And they were also wise enough to recognize the beast and to avoid the beast. Remember the beast Esau? He wants to dominate. He wants to control. And if he can't do that, if he perceives a threat that cannot be controlled, then he's Amalek. He will kill. And so the Magi recognized this in him. And so they went another way. They didn't let Herod know exactly where this baby king was. But they did leave the gold, the frankincense, and the myrrh. All right, so first of all, they followed a star. What did Bilam see when he observed? Remember our term there, Tashuri, journey down with me. Come from the summit of your faith. Right? The first mention is going to be in the mouth of Bilam, prophesying about this perfect Israel and this king. I observe him, but not now. I see him, but not near. It's something in the future. Herod knows this prophecy. He knows the Torah. Look how many rabbis he crucified. The star, we know, arose from Jacob, the King Messiah. And the Magi have seen this star of the King. Who is the gold? Well, we know gold is associated with the refined 12 tribes of Israel. You can read through Exodus 28:11. You can read Exodus 39:6. It reminds you how the 12 tribes' names were etched onto an onyx stone and set in gold filigree, and it was carried on the shoulders of the high priest. The shoulders represent government. And what does it say of Messiah? The government will be on his shoulder. He will carry these tribes in gold on his shoulders. Remember, King Messiah will bring them home. Also think of the purification from the time that Ezekiel prophesied that Israel was nothing more than copper, tin, and dross before they went into their Babylonian exile. But when Zechariah sees them, after they returned from their exile, now he calls them that pure gold of the 7-branch menorah, which we see again. I remember that was in the time of Zerubbabel. And then we see them again in the book of Revelation, the 7 assemblies, as the 7-branch menorah standing before the throne. And so the high priest, remember, he would take these 12 tribes, 6 and 6, and he would take them all the way into the holy place when he did the incense service with frankincense and myrrh, among others. And so these temple incense sacrifices in Jerusalem, the 12 tribes are identified with that service. Because remember, it represented the prayers. The incense service represented the prayers of all Israel. So we have the gold representing the return from exile of the 12 tribes. And then we have the frankincense and the myrrh, their prayers being offered up in the holy place, in a place of purification where that pure gold menorah was. And these are the gifts that the wise men bring. Isaiah 60 verse 9 says, "Surely the coastlands," there's our word again, "the nations will wait for me, and the ships of Tarshish will come first to bring your sons from afar, their silver and their gold with them, for the name of the Lord your God and for the Holy One of Israel, because he has glorified you." That's Isaiah prophesying. They're going to bring your sons from afar, their silver and their gold with them. This is the work of King Messiah. Well, bringing the silver and the gold, as you look in that section of Isaiah 60:61, you can see a prophecy that includes camels coming, bringing these gifts. It's not random. And so Herod knows these things. He's kind of Jewish, but he's more Roman than he is Jewish. He's actually 2 kinds of red beast. He's 2 kinds of Edom. He's by lineage Edomian, an Edomite from Esau, and he's a Roman citizen. Remember, Rome came to be known as Esau, the red one. So he's double scarlet beast. He has a reason, knowing he's not a rightful king, not a rightful governor. Of course he would be afraid if a rightful king were born. There's prophecies of the 7th shepherd and the 8th prince in Micah chapter 5, how he would bring the lost sheep. Prophecies how he's going to return them from the coastlands, and he's going to defeat the red one. He's going to defeat Rome. He's going to defeat Edom. He's going to defeat the red one, the scarlet beast. Yes. And so, yeah, Herod is afraid. And he should be afraid. Here's the thing with Herod. He thinks he's about to be immediately displaced by this king. But plan A was actually about 2,000 years longer than he was led to believe from the prophecies. You know, we see that at Yeshua walking in the temple during the Feast of Dedication, which was Hanukkah. They ask him, like, are you the Messiah? Tell us plainly. And Yeshua starts talking about sheep. My sheep hear my voice. Because of this prophecy of the 7 shepherds. In Micah, they know that if he's King Messiah, then he will be the shepherd to go gather these lost sheep out of the nations. Instead, they just want to get rid of Rome. They don't really care about these sheep. And he's saying, you can't hear my voice because you're not concerned about these sheep. You just want me to overthrow Rome and bring you immediate relief. But what about your brothers? What about those who are lost? And that prophecy of the red one being defeated actually is associated with the time of Hanukkah. It's actually in the liturgy. It says, repel the red one, deliver us from the red one. And that would have been the exact time they would want to challenge Yeshua, are you the Messiah? And he says, it's about sheep. You have to understand, yes, I will overthrow Rome. I will overthrow the red beast at the proper time. But I've got a lot of work. I've got a lot of shepherding. I got a lot of collecting, observing to do. I have to lift them up to the summit of their faith and bring them home so that I can transform them into a people without blemish. If you're interested in those prophecies, we've got the Becky book about Hanukkah and the 7 shepherds. It's not a long book, but it'll go over the critical prophecies associated with Hanukkah in the book of Haggai and some other places. But the idea of Messiah as the 7th shepherd and the 8th prince is found in Micah 5:5. It says, this one will be our peace. When the Assyrian invades our land, when he tramples on our citadels, then we will raise against him 7 shepherds and 8 leaders of men. Right? So in those lists, you say, well, where's the list? You won't find it in the Bible. I mean, you'll find the people in the Bible. You won't find a specific list. The sages have developed this list based on clues they found in Scripture. The central shepherd was David in their list. And so the 7th shepherd would be a descendant of David. The 8th prince was thought to be King Messiah, the 7th being Elijah to prepare the people for King Messiah. So it is. It's about bringing the sheep home. There's a very sheep-related theme here. Well, if we go back again to our story about the time of Yeshua's birth, and the visitation of the wise men would have probably been within 2 years of Yeshua's birth because of the calculations that they're making when they see the star. Luke 2:13 says, suddenly there appeared with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host praising God and saying, glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace among men with whom he is pleased. Peace among men, right? The prophecy says this one will be our peace. The 7th shepherd, the 8th prince, the descendant of David, the King Messiah. And so they're announcing that the Star of Jacob has been born, that the 7th shepherd has been born, the 8th prince has been born. Luke 2:8, it says in the same region, there were some shepherds staying out in the fields and keeping watch over their flock by night. Now that sounds just like we said, just part of a story, just retelling something. But again, if you know your prophetic language, depending on context, the field is the world. The shepherds were out in the fields. Yeshua sent apostles out into the field of the world. And it says they're keeping watch over their flock by night. The night can represent the exile. So he has watchmen out there. He's the 7th shepherd, and he sends out shepherds to keep watch over the flock during the exile. But he is the 7th shepherd. He is watching. He says, I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. I'm lurking out here watching over you. I'm watching over the exiles until it's time for the 8th prince, King Messiah, to arise. He will be more than a shepherd. He will replace the nations of the earth. They will be, as when their stars begin to be shaken out of the places, then you can also see these kingdoms begin to fall. The nations begin to fall because what's happening, their power structures are falling and disintegrating. Because Prince Messiah is going to punish the red one. And again, that was associated with the time of Hanukkah. And that's also, remember, this is going to be a time when that is associated with the abomination that causes desolation. And Yeshua even continues prophesying about this. When you see the abomination that causes desolation, it had already happened during the time of the Greek beast empire, and he says it's going to happen again. And when you see this, you'll know what time it is. In this particular case, we can look back at that Hanukkah and say there might be a future Hanukkah that's going to spark the prince to begin to destroy the red one. But yes, Herod was double Edom. He was double red one. Idumean, Roman beast citizen. Herod knew that King Messiah would destroy Edom when he returned as the 8th prince. He's still thinking 7th shepherd, probably, like, oh my goodness. The time of the 7th shepherd, it inaugurated that. He sent other shepherds out into the field of the world in the exile to preach the gospel to his sheep. But he will still arise as the 8th prince in the proper time. Here's what Herod knew about Edom, the red one. Ezekiel 35:2 says, Son of man, set your face against Mount Seir, Edom, and prophesy against it, and say to it, Thus says the Lord God, Behold, I am against you, Mount Seir, and I will stretch out my hand against you, and make you a desolation and a waste. I will lay waste your cities, and you will become a desolation. Then you will know that I am the Lord. Remember what Esau does? He says, oh no, you're not. I am. I set the boundaries. I set the rules. That's what the red one does. Eventually, the Holy One says, you're going to know, red one. You're going to know, Edom. I am the Lord. You can't kill me. You can't move the boundaries, and you can't strip the word out of my people. And here's what he says Edom has done. In verse 10, he says, Because you have said, these 2 nations and these 2 lands will be mine, and we will possess them, although the Lord was there. That's a key. Because remember the fight between Esau and Jacob when they were still in Rebekah's womb? And she was told, there's 2 nations in your womb. Esau said, these 2 nations and these 2 lands will be mine, and we will possess them, although the Lord was there. Therefore, as I live, declares the Lord God, I will deal with you according to your anger and according to your envy. Remember Cain and Abel? Esau and Jacob. Your envy, which you showed because of your hatred against them. So I will make myself known among them when I judge you. Verse 14, Thus says the Lord God, as all the earth rejoices, I will make you a desolation. As you rejoiced over the inheritance of the house of Israel because it was desolate, so I will do to you. You will be a desolation, O Mount Seir and all Edom, all of it. Then they will know that I am the Lord. It's kind of like the 8th prince. He will take Edom to a place of desolation. Herod knows this. Yes, he's terrified. If he knows the gifts that the wise men are bringing, he's probably doubly terrified. We know that judgment does come from the east, right? Where did the wise men come from? The east. Remember the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah? There were actually 5 cities. 4 of the 5 were destroyed. 1 was spared because Lot would rather go to a little wicked city. That's crazy. But it says the sun had risen on the earth when Lot came to Zoar. Then the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire from the Lord out of heaven. And he overthrew those cities and all the valley and all the inhabitants of the cities and what grew on the ground. But Lot's wife behind him looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. And Abraham went early in the morning to the place where he had stood before the Lord. And he looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah. He looked eastward and toward all the land of the valley. And he looked, and behold, the smoke of the land went up like the smoke of a furnace. You've heard that phrase in Revelation before, when the hell bugs come out of Abaddon. So it was that when God destroyed the cities of the valley, God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow when he overthrew the cities in which Lot had lived. What does Lot receive? He receives a boundary of the nations, but not the boundary of Abraham. So there's, like you said, they will not be reckoned among the nations. These descendants, who are part of the land, the covenant, the people, they're not reckoned. Their boundaries are different from the nations. But judgment comes from the east. It came from that direction when the sun had risen. It's a harsh, dry judgment. And again, that's what the east represents. We talked about the north being hidden, where King Messiah is, the west being the place of the exiles, where the presence of Adonai watches over them. Well, east represents the judgment. The arrival of judgment. The Herodians were fascinated with prophecy, kind of like Ahab. He was fascinated with the prophets, even though his wife was trying to kill them. Herod had to have known that according to this prophecy, the harshest judgment on Edom would come with Israel's king from the east. Seeing these wise men come from the east, yes, would have been extremely troubling. Because on that side, where the harsh judgment comes from, those warriors were under the banner of Judah, the rightful royal tribe. I see a star. I see a scepter. I see a king. I see him coming from a royal tribe, from Judah. Herod knows he's wicked. He's everything that prophecy back here in Ezekiel 35 says he is. He's every bit that wicked. And now he can see wise men coming from the east. They say that a royal king has been born. They've seen his star. Herod knows he's wicked. Based on Exodus 14:21, Rashi says, an east wind is the strongest of winds. It is the wind through which the Holy One, blessed is he, exacts punishment from the wicked, as it says in the following 4 verses, and then it lists them. Jeremiah 18:17, like an east wind I will scatter them. Hosea 13:15, an east wind will come, the wind of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Ezekiel 27:26, an east wind shattered you in the heart of the seas. Seas represent peoples. Isaiah 27:8, he spoke with his hard spirit on the day of the east wind. Herod's afraid the east wind has come. What does he know about the Torah? Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and Adonai moved the sea with a strong east wind all night, and he turned the sea to damp land, and the waters split. He also knows, in the Jewish way of looking at things, it's in the wording of the Hebrew text, they believe that the waters all over the world split when the Red Sea split, and that's how the nations saw it and were afraid. We also know in Revelation the Euphrates is going to split to make way for the kings of the east. Yes, Herod does not want to see important men from the east coming his way because he is a usurper. He knows the east wind knows how to finish the work. So Babylon the Great, yes, will fall. It fell before, it's going to fall again. It was the head of the beast. Even the king of Babylon, we're talking about the red one, Rome, go all the way back to the golden head, the king of Babylon. He was told in Isaiah 14:12, how you have fallen from heaven, O star of the morning, son of the dawn. See, he was a star. He was a poser star. You have been cut down to earth. You have weakened the nations. Well, he calls him the star of the morning, the son of the dawn. That's who Yeshua is. He's the morning star. See how he's a usurper? Herod knows he's a usurper. He knows he's part of the progression of the beast kingdoms all the way from Babylon. And so this imposter beast king, image of Babylon, and the dragon from which he derived his authority, which if you trace the history back, that's actually Egypt. It's going to be conquered by the true star of Jacob. He's going to be destroyed with the nations that conformed to his image. But we know the star of the morning is coming to rule the nations in power with a rod of iron. 2 Peter 1:19. So we have the prophetic word made more sure, to which you do well to pay attention as to a lamp shining in a dark place, until the day dawns and the morning star arises in your hearts. Well, remember, the night is the exile, but the day's dawn is the end of the exile, when the morning star, Yeshua, will arise, Peter says, in your hearts. Not the king of Babylon. Revelation 2:28 says, I will give him the morning star. Revelation 22:16, I, Yeshua, have sent my angel to testify to you these things for the assemblies. I am the root and the descendant of David. He's the seventh shepherd, the bright morning star. He's the one. He's the eighth prince who will rule the world on behalf of his Father. So come with me from Lebanon, my bride. May you come with me from Lebanon. Journey down from the summit of Amanah, from the summit of Senir and Hermon, from the dens of lions, from the mountains of leopards. Now we understand the journey. Mount Hermon, remember, it's a snow-covered peak. Snow can be a sign of purity, that the exiles will be purified. They will learn the word and let that word wash them. But you know, it can also be a judgment. Like the leprosy was white as snow. Or Job 38:22, have you entered the storehouses of snow, or have you seen the storehouses of hail, which I have reserved for the time of distress, for the day of war and battle? So a couple of things. It sounds like as the children of Abraham come home, they're in the process of being purified. But it also sounds like it's a time of tribulation and judgment, that the judgment on the beast has begun. So we may return at a time of extreme tribulation and judgment. So let's look again at these gifts. Why were those gifts such a threat? Herod knew that the return of Israel with her King Messiah would be a great gift from the nations. It's prophesied that the nations of the world are going to bring the 12 nations, the 12 tribes of Israel, from their exile in the nations, and they will bring them as gifts to King Messiah. Kind of reminds me of a little drummer boy. He doesn't have anything to give to a king. What can you give to a king? There's only one proper gift. When the eighth prince arrives, when he destroys Edom, there's only going to be one appropriate gift that the nations can give to King Messiah. And it's going to be gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. It's going to be his purified people. It's going to be those who have offered their prayers. Remember, the incense represented the prayers of Israel. There was no work of beautification that Herod did on the Temple Mount in the first century that could rival this gift. And Herod was worried that his government was about to be deposed by the authentic morning star, the authentic King of Kings, the authentic Star of Jacob, the one holding the authentic scepter, not Rome. The one descended through the tribe of Judah from David, the seventh shepherd, the eighth prince. So why would this gift be brought by wise strangers from the coastlands, especially from the east? Well, it has to do with one more meaning of journey down, where we started. Remember, journey down with me. Well, we said it actually, as it's spelled out, it's tashuri, because it's a verb in an imperative form. It's a commandment. Tashuri. It's actually a play on word. And you can find it in 1 Samuel 9:7. When Saul and his servant are trying to think of some gift they could give to a prophet that would be appropriate. Saul said to his servant, "But behold, if we go, what shall we bring the man? For the bread is gone from our sack, and there is no present." That word there, teshurah. Same word, teshurah. To bring to the man of God. What do we have? Well, he said, well, I don't have anything fit for this great prophet. What will the nations bring to King Messiah? What's appropriate? What's the gift? What's the teshurah? Well, remember, the first mention of Shur was Balaam's prophecy when he sees Israel without blemish. When he sees that there's a scepter, that there's a star, when he hears the shout of a king among them, when he sees them dwelling in perfection without sin. It's like they're a gift. He sees them as a gift, tashuri, and not just a gift, an appropriate gift for a king. So what can the nations return to King Messiah? Isaiah 66, verse 18 says, "For I know their works and their thoughts. The time is coming to gather all nations and tongues." The coastlands, right? "And they shall come and see my glory. I will set a sign among them and will send survivors from them to the nations. Tarshish, Put, Lud, Meshech, Tubal, and Yavan, to the distant coastlands that have neither heard my fame nor seen my glory. And they will declare my glory among the nations." That's happened. Yeshua sent out his apostles to all those places and declared the glory of Adonai among the nations. And it's right there that we don't really want to read a 2,000-year break between the period and the capital letter of the next word. But it says, "Then they shall bring all your brethren from all the nations as a grain offering to the Lord, on horses and chariots and litters, on mules, on camels to my holy mountain, Jerusalem, says the Lord, just as the sons of Israel bring their grain offering in a clean vessel to the house of the Lord." Remember the purification of Mount Hermon? And what are they doing? It's like they're commandeering all public transportation. No longer are they going to use, armored personnel carriers and tanks. It's like their chariots have been turned into things to provide transportation for the children of Abraham to go home. The nations will return. The nations will realize who's among them, that they are identified with a land, a covenant, and a people. And they're going to say, go home. Go home. The wiser nations, they know they have no proper gift for Adonai and his King Messiah except for the glorious return of their purified, faith-filled people, Israel. These are the descendants of Abraham. They're at the height of their faith. They're returning from the north, hidden in Messiah, coming across this mountain of Emunah, this height of their faith, purified with the holiness of Hermon. Israel is the people. Israel is the land. And they're bound in a covenant. Because remember, there's no plan B. There's only plan A. And Ezekiel 36:5 says, "Therefore, thus says the Lord God, surely in the fire of my jealousy, I have spoken against the rest of the nations and against Edom, who appropriated my land for themselves as a possession with wholehearted joy and with scorn of soul to drive it out for a prey." So, any country, any nation, any people who think they can redraw the boundaries of Israel and decide who dwells there and impose a different covenant, change the times and the seasons. If they think that, he says, you're going to find out what jealousy is. You think you're jealous? I'll show you jealousy. He says, in the fire of my jealousy. How can you stand before that fire? Herod knew that. And he knew this. Isaiah 9:6, "For a child will be born to us, a son will be given to us, and the government will rest on his shoulders. And his name will be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. This one shall be our peace." Isn't that what Micah 5:5 said? This one will be our peace. He'll bring back all the exiles all the way back past the Babylonian exile, all the way back to the exile under Assyria. Those who we thought were irretrievably lost, he will find them, and he will find those attached to them who have recognized there's one way in. And so he says in Isaiah 49, "I will lift up my hand to the nations and set up my standard to the peoples. And they will bring your sons in their bosom, and your daughters will be carried on their shoulders. Kings will be your guardians, and their princesses your nurses. They will bow down to you with their faces to the earth and lick the dust of your feet. And you will know that I am the Lord. Those who hopefully wait for me will not be put to shame." So what's our job? Hopefully wait. Just wait. In the first century, I know they were sure that Yeshua would be just right back. He'd just be right back. He wasn't going to be gone long. Just a minute. Just a moment. And Yeshua tells us, "Behold, I come quickly." In our human perception of time, it feels like it's taken a long time. But you have to be ready. Because that's the thing about the dawn and being the star of the morning. It's most visible, it's brightest at the dawn. And if you've ever worked a job where you were outside at night and your shift was kind of moved over into the day and you got into the habit of watching the stars because you looked for those first glows that said the dawn is getting close. And you realize there's never one moment where you can look back and put your finger on it and say, that was the dawn, right there. You can't. It's just upon you. You get all the clues. You can get all the signs. You know it's coming. But then all of a sudden it's there and you don't know exactly at which moment it arose. And so Peter's saying, hang on, keep watch. The exile's almost over. And that day star, the morning star, is going to arise in your hearts. And you're not going to miss it. You're going to know the exact moment, that twinkling of an eye. Because he's going to shout with the shout of a king, and you're going to journey with him from your exile.